Ladies and gentlemen, everyone around in between, it is DebateSensei NPDA edition, where we talk about things relevant to competitive parliamentary debate at the college level. I have my resident expert, Gabe Graville. Thank you so much, Gabe, for being here.
Thanks for having me. It's good to see you again.
I look significantly different, I think, since last time you saw me. So
Yeah, it looks good.
Yeah, I had a charity event, successful. We raised like over $4,200, and I shaved my head as a result of that. So
Nice.
yeah, excellent. All right, so what we're doing is we're talking about it's kind of like a point in time during the season. At the end of the fall semester, there's a number of things going on. One of the things is assessing how you have done and other people have done so far in the season, and kind of taking stock of where you're ranking nationally, but also sort of planning what to do about that over winter break. So I kind of wanted to start with just discussing the national tournaments for parliamentary debate, how they operate, how you get invited, and what that process is like. So I know NPDA is open, right? You know what I mean? Like NPDA, anybody can join that one, and it's got a pretty big draw. So that's pretty straightforward. But NPTE, how does that work? How do you get there?
So historically, NPTE is the invite tournament of the Parley National Circuit cycle. In order to be invited, you have to acquire a certain amount of NPTE points, which are calculated through an algorithm. The algorithm is based on your win-loss record in prelims, and then you get a certain amount of points with a multiplier on the amount you gain based on how many consecutive elims you win. And then also there is it's multiplied by some sort of factor based on the pool size. So if there is a larger tournament, it is potentially worth more points. I'm not exactly certain what the procedure is going to look like this year. Last year, they did not end up even really having a point qualification because the entry was so low. In my senior year, they had lowered the point qualification, I believe, down to 15, which was the lowest it had ever been in my experience. When I started in 2018, 2019, I believe you had to get 22 points before, or maybe it was like 20 something points before January 1st in order to get like a first round qualification. And then it was I think a lower amount of points after that date by sometime in February in order to get invited. Way before me, maybe not way before me, but before me, it was a 64-team invitational tournament, which was, great. It's pretty big. It's the only tournament that gets seeded in Prelim 1, which is really, I think it's really fun, and it'd be kind of interesting if other teams or other tournaments did it. But that means that if you were ranked number 1 in the country, you got to hit the 32nd ranked team or the 64th ranked team in your first round. Generally, it has been, when I started, it was it wasn't easy to qualify. You had to certainly break at multiple tournaments. It also worked where I believe only 4 tournaments counted towards your points. So, you had to do you had to do well at a certain number of tournaments, or at 4 specific tournaments. You couldn't just go to more tournaments than everybody else to do well and have a lot of points. The NPTE point system was also like in itself kind of an institution. I remember like watching it very often after every weekend when I first started competing, because you got to see like who moved up, who moved down. I remember a specific round my freshman year where we had prelim 1. We ended up like winning, and we thought like that was a really strange round. They were super good. I can't believe we won. And then our coaches came up to us and were like, they were ranked number 3 in the country. Like, congrats. So there was a lot of sort of like mysticism connected to the rankings itself. And it's really a fun system. It's a really fun institutional system that kind of like gives it that sheen or legitimacy of like other competitive leagues that I don't think we see in a lot of other forensics programs.
All right. Yeah. So, I mean, when I went in 2003, so I think it was still growing in popularity. I don't think we reached the 64 team peak that it reached afterward, but it was still pretty competitive. And so, just seeing how now at NPTE, is it still 2 judges per round?
Yeah, so it is 6 prelims. It's 2 judges per round, and it's by ballot count. And then the elim bracket is a double elimination bracket, which is super unique, and there aren't any other tournaments that do that. And you get seeded based on how many ballots you get as opposed to round wins. So it's possible, to split ballots, obviously. I remember my freshman year, we broke to elims on a split ballot in the final round, which was so we were the lowest possible seed. We immediately hit the would-be national champions and lost on a prompt 3-0. But because it was double elim, we got like 3 or 4 more elim rounds to do, and we actually ended up placing pretty highly. So it was I've always been very fond of the NPTE format. It's always been kind of my favorite tournament of the year.
I've always been really fond of the double elimination setup. I think it's great in an activity that has like forced sides, right? You have to be affirmative or negative. There's always a benefit to one side over the other. You know what I mean? It's like there's like presumption doesn't always necessarily favor the neg. And sometimes you just get on the wrong side of things. I think that really helps to even things out. Even though it kind of worked against me in my final year, like we knocked out the top seed in the lead up to the final round, and then they knocked us out in the final round. I don't know. They were exceptionally good debaters, and I think they deserved it. So it's good.
That's I found that is most common what happens if the teams in the finals previously hit. Usually the team that gets knocked out, I think, ends up winning it. That's what happened when we won it. We got knocked down to the losers bracket, which was heartbreaking because it also means when you lose that winners final round, you have to debate 3 more times or 2 more times before you get to even hit that team again, and they get to take a couple rounds off. But yeah, I always have been very fond of the format. Another thing to mention, though, is that it is a topic area tournament, and it is also sort of becoming the only topic area tournament that we really have. In which it kind of created the drive to have other topic area tournaments because teams wanted to prepare for that style of debate. A topic area tournament in Parley is where you get the topics ahead of time, so you get to prepare cases. They still have to follow the typical Parley convention. You still have to prep them and write them down prior to the round. You can't bring in anything you wrote down prior to prep time. And you also don't know which topic you're going to get in which round. But it does give you like a lot more leeway to sort of do research, have more in-depth arguments, have more creative strategies. And the other thing about it being a topic area tournament is that topics get submitted by students and coaching staff throughout the country and then voted upon by schools that are competing in NPDA, which I always really loved. I think we peaked out at having 3 out of 5 of the topic tournament or topic papers that got selected in our junior year. That felt pretty good to go into 60% of our rounds and have written the topic. And it's something that I think like encourages like unique topic writing. It allows debaters to sort of like pick what they want to debate about, and I think it leads to really like interesting rounds.
Okay, so there's this big tournament. You got to get points to get into it. You got to go, you got to win at tournaments and stuff. But now we're entering into the winter break, right? And for so, I have other series I'm doing with like NFALD and CETA, and they have a different sort of number of tournaments over the winter break. How is Parley doing with like the number of tournaments and competitive tournaments over winter break?
So there aren't any tournaments over winter break. Maybe that's just because Parley is full of a bunch of lazy People don't want to enjoy their break or whatever. But the closest thing we have is Mile High, which has undergone different name changes. Used to be in Utah, so they called it Mile High. Then it was in Texas, and they kept calling it Mile High. And now it's going to be in Illinois, and it's still going to be Mile High. But that is a double. It's two tournaments in one. And traditionally, what they've done is that one half of the tournament was designed to emulate NPTE, and the other half was designed to emulate NPDA. They stopped doing, because NPDA is 8 prelims. They stopped doing the 8 prelims a couple years back, I believe, but they still do one half of the tournament having like topics that you get beforehand. So a lot of winter break preparation is writing topic papers for that tournament. That, I would say, is always the biggest tournament of the year outside of nationals itself. And at least when I competed, we always spent a lot of time over winter break writing cases so that we would be the most prepared we could be for those tournaments.
Okay. So it's a lot of self-work then, huh?
It is.
Maybe, yeah.
Maybe I think
we like scrimmages together or something.
Yeah, sorry. Sometimes people do scrimmages against like people on their team or online rounds. I think I said maybe it was our first episode when we talked about what you do preparing for a season that I never really did that much over the summer. But that was not true for the winter break. Winter break was always kind of when you like really sort of dialed in your strategies. You knew like where you stood in the field and what you needed to do to improve. And that's always, at least when I did the most amount of off-season work.
Okay. So there's still a first round process, a first round and second round bids for NPTE?
I don't believe so this year because they haven't published rankings yet. I was actually talking to some people on the NPTE board this year, and there's a little bit of a snag just creating like the websites and as well as like making a functional web page with the like calculations and everything. So there's a little bit of a snag. I think it'll probably just be more similar to last year if I had to bet, but there will still like be a qualification drop off, a minimum that you have to achieve in the season to be able to go.
If you're going to spitball how many teams are going to be at NPTE this year, what do you think?
I would guess upwards of 16, which I think is the minimum to run a bracket. Got
it. All right. So we've compiled a list that's almost 16 people long based off of the performance this so far. All right. A number of different factors, not just performance, but just a best guess. This is not a scientific collection of ideas, but let's start with some of these, a few of the honorable mentions, and then we'll get into a top 10. So first honorable mention, Kobe and Jenkins. So what makes you put them up here as an honorable mention?
I've been really impressed with the Utah program just in general. I wanted to include them. I don't think that they have won a tournament, or they did win a tournament because 3 of their teams closed out the Crossmen. But of all of the Utah teams I saw, I think that there's another Utah team we'll talk about that I think is by far their strongest team. But I wanted to mention them because they did get that win at the Crossmen, which is very impressive. They have a very capable coaching staff and prep room. They seem to, in my opinion, be learning debate relatively quickly over in Utah. Not that they don't know debate, but I think that being a sort of revitalized program, they don't have a whole lot of circuit experience from previous seasons, and some of them are younger. So I wanted to mention them because I think that just that school in general is producing a lot of good debate that is